All right. I wanted to talk a little bit about abatement notices that you send to the court to try to get your traffic ticket abated. There's numerous documents out there. USFL talks a lot about this. And there's other people that talk about abating the traffic ticket. And I've actually attempted to do this just to see what would happen. And I've actually learned a few things that I wanted to share. So the first thing is there is a document, common law abatement, and it has just a disjointed bunch of notices and court filings and things in it. And I don't know the real purpose of it because there's very little explanation as to like when you would do something and how you would do it, who you'd file it with, that kind of thing, when you would file these documents. So it's a little hard to read through this thing. It's got some good information in it, but in my opinion, it has more information in there that would get you into trouble than it would actually help you with any of this stuff. So I wanted to walk through this whole traffic court thing that everybody likes to talk about and see if there's some aspects to it that make sense. So the first thing that I want to talk about is this abatement thing. So one of there's all kinds of different statements that you can put in for this abatement. But here's the problem, at least that I see. In court, you have equity courts, which are like civil courts, and then you have criminal courts. When you get a traffic ticket, the traffic cop, because you have violated this rule that they have on the road, the traffic cop could arrest you and take you before the probate and have them make a ruling or set up a court and do a bond and do all this other stuff right then and there. That's one of the things that they could do. However, and I'm going to speak primarily from Georgia because that's the rules that I'm more familiar with. But instead of doing that, in lieu of arresting you and taking you into court immediately, they instead ask you for your driver's license, and they use that license and your signature on the ticket to basically be a promise that you're going to show up to court. So instead of them immediately arresting you and taking you into court, they give you the ability to just sign the ticket. You're not admitting to guilt or anything else. You're not agreeing to anything by signing the tickets, although I would highly recommend that you put without prejudice on it just to reserve your rights. But you're not agreeing to anything at all. All you're doing is saying that, hey, I received this ticket and I will show up to court on the specified date. Now, if you choose to pay the ticket, that's your prerogative. But if you decide to go to court, then you're going to court. But here's one key element about criminal law is that in criminal actions, you don't receive a summons to come to court. They get a warrant and they arrest you and they take you to court. So in a criminal aspect of going to court, there is no summons. There's no thing that says, hey, we're gonna take you to court for murder. Please show up to court next Wednesday. Now, on a traffic ticket, it is a criminal act, but it is a misdemeanor. It's not something that is going to necessarily put you in jail, depending on what the infraction is. And so instead of forcing you to immediately come to court and them to get a warrant and so forth, they give you, in lieu of bond, a traffic citation, and it's a citation and summons. But in criminal, there is no such thing as a summons, and therefore, if you file a notice of abatement based on an improper filing of a summons, it doesn't make any sense because there is no summons in criminal court that has any, you can go to and I'll show you some of this stuff in a second, but you can go to civil court and look up a summons and you can see what a summons looks like and what's supposed to be on the face of a summons. But if you go to the criminal portion of the code, there isn't anything like that, at least not that I've ever seen. So these notices of abatement are kind of pointless as far as I can tell. The court, in fact, the prosecutor in this particular situation, they didn't even reply to the notice of abatement. They just ignore the whole thing because it's, I guess, in the sense of it, it's ridiculous to send a notice of abatement. So these documents that you read, and this is a common law abatement that I'm looking at here on the screen. They go through and they have, these write-ups of things that you should send to the court. And again, they literally just jump from one thing to another thing to another thing, and it's really hard to understand exactly what what you're supposed to be doing with any of this stuff. This is the book that we're looking at, is Common Law Abatement. It starts off with some interesting diatribe of different things and how you're what an abatement is and all this kind of stuff, and it's everything's running under admiralty and this, that, and the other, but it provides no actual evidence that that's the case. So it's hard to put a lot of weight into what this thing's saying. And I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm just saying that it is extremely poorly written and organized, because it's like somebody took a bunch of legal filings and just threw them all into one document with no explanation as to what any of them are. And some of them are redundant, and there's a lot of information in here that's just pure bullshit. So a couple things. Number one, the flag. Everybody harps on this United States flag having a gold fringe, and that proves that it's admiralty. That is absolute bullshit. There's nothing about the gold fringe that is even anywhere listed in any of the legislation for creating the American flag. In fact, I would argue that it is not an American flag based on the legislation that has been passed about the flag. So it's worth looking up. I think it's section 4 in the USC goes through all of the information on the flag. It's worth going and looking at it because it lays out exactly what the flag's supposed to look like. It lays out if you do anything to the flag, it is a misdemeanor offense. And the gold fringe, adding a gold fringe to it, in my opinion, is putting something on the face of the flag. It's doing something to the flag. Now, I also have information from the Attorney General, I think is who wrote it, talking about where they had gone and talked to the military about the gold fringe, and they said it's just for decoration. It has no meaning whatsoever, and so there's no evidence of the flag having anything to do with Admiralty. It's just made up, unless somebody can produce an actual document to prove it, and I've looked all over. So the flag and the Admiralty thing is complete nonsense. Now, the next thing that I want to look at is I'm going to get out of the books, and we're actually going to go down. So, and this is something else. You'll see a lot of videos, and Yusufel and a lot of other people, they make this statement that driving is a commercial activity. The problem is they're getting all of that information from the federal government's USC code. They're not actually getting it from the states. And so, and they also, there's a lot of people quoting UCC and making reference to it to prove that the states all operate under UCC and so forth. And it's complete nonsense as far as I can tell. The reason, for example, and I just want to point this out if I can get to it here really quickly. Let's see where I'm at. Georgia. I'm going to get rid of all of this. Let me get this over here where you can actually see it. So this is the Georgia code. And one of the things that I want to look at is, you'll notice here you've got civil practice, and then down here you've got crimes, offenses, and criminal procedures. So Title 17 in Georgia is criminal procedures, and Title 9 is civil practice. And then you've also got a court for Title 15 and so forth. But if we go down here to the motor vehicle section, this is Title 40, And we come in here and start looking at actually, hold on, I wanted to point something else out. If you come up here to Title 10, I think it is, it says Commercial Code. That's UCC. And if you come into Title 10 and I'm sorry, Title 11, if you come in here and look at it in general provisions, it tells you that it is the Uniform Commercial Code. So this section, Title 11 in the Georgia Code, is the implementation of the UCC as far as Georgia is concerned. It only includes the things that they want included in it, but it's their implementation of the UCC. But when people say that the entirety of the Georgia Code is all based on the UCC, that is just an utter lie. They have no proof that that is true, and that just looking at it, it proves that it's not. Another thing is UCC only covers commerce. It only covers banking and those sorts of things. It doesn't cover driving. And so one of the claims is that all driving is commercial. Well, I've not seen evidence of this. And in fact, if you look at the state codes, they're all different. With respect to driver's license, with respect to, commercial activity, all of that stuff, that's all different codes, and it's all state driven. It's not, there is no uniform code for driving across the entire country. So when you you think about when you go in from one state to another, even from one city to another, the rules change. So I mean, as far as driver speed limits and those kind of, they can post speed limit signs and all sorts of things in different areas in different ways. You can drive up 75 through the state of Georgia, and in one area it's a 65-mile-an-hour speed limit, another 70, another's 55. So it's, each area sets its own rules, and the state of Georgia's code kind of goes through how all of that stuff works. So when somebody starts bringing that up, you really have to start digging into your own state's code, and don't rely on any of these documents to tell you what you should do in court and what you should not do. So you get a ticket, and the ticket says that you have to show up to court. Well, you do have to show up to court based on the Georgia codes, and you do have to, your driver's license is used in lieu of a bond. If they don't believe that you're going to show up to court, they will take you to court or take you to jail and make you get a bond to ensure that you're going to come to court. And that bond is basically, a money order that says that if you don't show up to court, this money is ours. And so that's what, you're doing when you go get a bond. But the driver's license works in a way to not make you have to do all that. So when you go into the drive into the highway, into Title 40, and we get in here to motor vehicles, one of the things that you'll notice in here is that they have their own definitions. And so if you go into the definition section, so one of the claims is that all of us are persons, and to be honest with you, a lot of the code references person as being the thing that is actually responsible for what is going on. Person, you can't, and this really goes with every word, you cannot assume that you know what any of these words mean. You've got to actually go look these things up. So person, in respect to the Georgia code, and I'm going to stop right here for driver, for example, because that's one of the things people like to harp on, is that driver means something else. But it says driver means every person who drives or is in actual physical control of a vehicle. So that seems pretty obvious, except that it says every person. So we need to actually go and look up what a person is. So we're going to scroll down here. And here's motor vehicle. Motor vehicle means every vehicle which is self-propelled other than an electric personal assistive mobility device. So again, not the definition everyone likes to push on their videos when they're talking about USC and UCC. And again, UCC doesn't have anything to do with any of this. So 43 says a person means every natural person, firm, partnership, association, corporation, or trust. Now, you'll see some definitions where it says person means individuals, firms, partnerships, whatever. that is an example of the entire definition of a person being a fictional character. It's not actually a human being. But a natural person, by the definition of a natural person, is in fact a living being. It's a human being. And I don't know if natural person is defined in this section, but it is defined in the Georgia Code, and it's a individual human being is what it says. And it can be a man. There's different types, and as men and women. So for all you transvestites, you should be offended because Georgia Code only has 2 sections for sex. But the point is that the Georgia Code actually covers human beings driving vehicles, and vehicles are our automobiles. There's all of this argument about traveling, and I don't have to have a license and all this other stuff. It's as far as the Georgia codes are concerned, it's all nonsense. It just doesn't fit. So anybody that thinks I'm wrong, I'd love to debate you on this topic, because I can't see how any of this stuff works. Now, this gets us to the Howard Freeman aspect of this court thing, and this is where things actually start to get a little more interesting. Now, I want to point out a couple things here before I move on from this section, and that is, if we go down here to state. So within all of the codes, they all refer to a state. In this state, this, anyone in this state, anyone driving in this state. And so it is necessary to understand what they mean by in this state. And one of the interesting things is that the definition for state within the driving Title 40 code says state means a state. Well, that's helpful as hell. State means a state. What do you mean? A state of what? And then it goes on to say a territory or possession of the United States. Now, so state means a state, territory, or possession of the United States. So I read these things to be a single statement, because you've got state, territory, or possession of the United States. And so the question becomes, what state is a possession of the United States? It can't be the Republic of Georgia. And so one of the things that I am fairly convinced of is that all of these codes are written for something that is not, in fact, what we believe that we live on. It's not the actual land we live on. It's some fiction that has been created that is actually part of the United States government. And so, or the District of Columbia. And, even, and this doesn't even use the word includes, but the entire group of things that are listed here are all relative to the District of Columbia. The United States, the District of Columbia, Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, Providence. Now, the Providence, Canada is interesting, but I'm assuming that it's because we've got some, something going on with Canada with respect to the driver's license, being able to go back and forth. So, but anyway, I just want to point out state and the United States, the definition of the United States is not found in the driver's license code, but it is found in other sections of the code, and it is the District of Columbia. So this whole state thing is interesting. I just wanted to mention that. But what I want to do is I want to talk for a minute about the court, when you actually go into court. So here, and I've watched a bunch of videos. I've not actually attempted to do this, but we're about to. We're going to court in a couple weeks, and we're going to give this a shot and see how it goes. But Howard Freeman he's deceased now, but Howard Freeman was an advocate of going before the court and asking the court to give you the nature and cause of the case against you. Now, I want to talk a little bit about nature and cause, because it's kind of a confusing aspect of our Constitution, or our Bill of Rights. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to move this out of the way for a second, and we'll get back over here to my documents. And I want to go down here to, let's see, how do we want to proceed? We got motor vehicle stuff. So Howard Freeman the thing that he talks about is in your Bill of Rights, you have a Sixth Amendment Bill of Rights. And your Sixth Amendment says, in all criminal prosecutions. Now, I want to point out really quickly that if I jump down here to the Georgia codes and we go to, I think, let's see, no, it's going to be in courts, I think. Extent, no jurisdiction, effect of rules of court. So the rules of court, it says the rules of the respective courts legally adopted and not in conflict with the Constitution of the United States or of the state or the laws thereof are binding. Okay, so it says they cannot be in conflict of the Constitution. Now, the Bill of Rights, if we go back up here to the Bill of Rights and we take a look at our Sixth Amendment, it says in all criminal prosecutions. So the aspect of a traffic ticket is criminal. There's lots of videos of people going before the court and asking, is this a criminal proceeding, and getting an answer, an affirmative answer that yes, this is a criminal proceeding. It cannot be civil, and if the court says it's civil, then they need to produce a contract that shows that you've signed a contract to abide by these rules or whatever it happens to be. So it can't be a criminal action. I mean, a civil action. It has to be criminal. And this is where Howard Freeman kind of introduced this, and I don't know if he was the one that came up with it, but he definitely pushed this pretty hard, is that in the United States, in a criminal court, when a criminal action is taken, there are only a couple different ways. There's really three, but there's only a couple different hard ways that a court can act. One is under common law, because in common law, you have a criminal aspect of criminal law. Another is admiralty, and admiralty I'm going to kind of leave out because admiralty is more of a military tribunal. It's not. It is very much related to a maritime court, but it's more for military. I believe that's my understanding of it, and so maritime is more related to what we're discussing. So maritime is a court that got set up, and our government actually has the ability to have these courts. It's in the Constitution. It's a court that's set up to deal with international contracts, where I contract with a company in France to send them some products. They agree to pay for those products, but when they get those products, they don't pay for them, and they don't send the ship back to, to whatever. So it's a contract. It's a negotiated instrument to denote what this relationship is going to be. And if either one of us violates that contract, we have to go before a court. And the question is, well, what court? I'm not going to go to France to go to court. I'm not going to come to the United States to go to court, because they're biased courts. And so you have to go into this maritime court, which is supposed to be an international court that is set up to handle these types of arguments or these cases. So by them saying that we're in a criminal court, they have invoked, or they have allowed me to invoke my Sixth Amendment right, because it covers criminal court and criminal prosecutions. So in the Sixth Amendment, it says the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation. So this is our first argument, or our first question before the court, is they have pulled us into a courtroom and they are attempting to make us pay a fine. And they have already admitted on the record that this is a criminal action that is being taken. So your first question is, well, Your Honor, if this is a criminal proceeding, then am I in a common law court, or is this an admiralty court? Because I don't, or either one, maritime court. Because I don't understand the rules and procedure for this particular court, because I don't recognize it. I don't know where I'm at. The judge is, from most of the videos and things, they've started going into the statutory argument. This is a statutory court. Now, on the surface, they're not necessarily lying, because there are statutes that control how that court acts. So it is could be a statutory court. However, there's a huge problem with that argument, and I'm going to show you exactly what that argument is, or what that problem is, in a second. But the point is that I still, even though it's a statutory court or anything else, I still have the requirement by my constitutional rights to know the nature and cause of this court. Now, there's one thing that I left out when and I'm not really going through the entire conversation, but the one thing you want to make sure that you tell the court that you're there for special appearance. So when they ask you if you're present, you're going to say, yes, Your Honor, I'm here. And I would even say that, I spell my name with upper and lowercase letters. I've noticed that the citation has them in all uppercase, and I don't know if that has any intent or not, but I just want to mention that I do use upper and lowercase letters for my name. And I am here under special appearance. Now, what does special appearance mean? Special appearance, and I don't know, I do have it in my code here, but I don't know, I don't have it for Georgia, and I don't remember. Let's see if I can quickly find special appearance. Yeah, I will more than likely. So this is the code section, UCC 1-308, that we've talked about before, about reserving your rights by writing without prejudice on your ticket when you sign it. I will have to find the where I've hidden the where I have hidden that, because I don't remember exactly where it's at. But essentially, a special appearance is you coming before a court, and you're notifying the court at the very beginning, and you have to do this at the very beginning, otherwise the court gains jurisdiction automatically. You have to tell them that you're there under special appearance, and what that does is it notifies them that you are present, but you are not subject to any of their jurisdiction, or you're not providing them jurisdiction, because you're just there to find out what the nature and cause of the action is. You're not there to do anything further. You're not giving them jurisdiction until they prove jurisdiction. So that special appearance lets them know that they don't have jurisdiction, and therefore they cannot act upon you. You do not want to go in there and be rude or argue with the judge or interrupt the judge. Let him talk, whatever he's saying, even if he's losing his mind. Let him say what he's got to say, because the facts are still here. So when you tell him you're under special appearance, and you've notified him that you want to know the nature and cause of the action, and you've established the fact that you're in a criminal proceeding, at that point you ask the court what type of court you're in. I know I'm not in common law, because there's no witness over here testifying that I've committed trespass against them. So it only leaves admiralty or maritime for me to be in that type of a court. But I would argue there's no international contract that exists, and if there is, then the prosecuting attorney needs to present it. So I'm confused about where we're at. And at this point, the judge, from everything I've seen, says we're in a statutory court. Now, statutory court, that would be fine. However, let's jump back over to the Georgia codes and see what we see over here. So I'm going to back up here, and we're going to go back to all of our chapters, and I got one more. And you'll notice here that if we look at Title 9, that's civil practice. Title 10, 11, 12, 13, we got courts. Title 15 is courts, and then we got crimes and offenses, and then we got Title 17 is criminal procedure. So we have a civil practice that is covered here for civil cases. We have a criminal procedure for criminal actions, and they've already notified us that we are criminal. Therefore, we should fit underneath this criminal section. And so by them saying that they're under a statutory jurisdiction, there is no section in here that says statutory jurisdiction. Like the criminal aspect says criminal, therefore your Sixth Amendment applies. it doesn't say statutory, criminal and statutory, it says criminal. So you have the ability to know the nature of the court. Now, you know the charge, nature and cause, you know the cause, you were speeding. So we're not arguing, we're not here to argue the cause of the action. We are here to argue or to request the nature of the court that we're in. Where are we at this particular point? Because before I enter a plea or before I argue with you about anything, we're not arguing with the court at all, but before I do any of this stuff, we need to establish up front that you have jurisdiction in this matter, and in order to do that, you need to tell me what kind of court we're in. Because if this is a court of Alabama and I'm in Georgia, then the court could rule all kinds of ways, but they don't have jurisdiction. And I do want to point something else out. Special appearance has to be presented at the very beginning to notify the court that they do not have jurisdiction. Jurisdiction can be argued at any point during the case. It can even be argued after the case to get something removed because the court didn't have jurisdiction in the first place. So by the nature and cause, which is listed in your Sixth Amendment, you are basically saying, I want to know what type of court this is and that it actually has jurisdiction over this matter. And so by them saying that they're in a statutory court, that they might as well say they're in a court of Alabama, because it doesn't apply to a criminal action. And that's your other problem, is that they said this was a criminal action. So you want to get on the record and say, for the record, the court has indicated that this is a criminal proceeding. Well, then later when they go in and start trying to claim that it's statutory, that's something to bring up as well for the record, to say that, well, now for the record, the court has changed jurisdiction into a statutory jurisdiction. So now, Your Honor, I have a question about statutory jurisdiction. I am familiar with, in the case of Georgia, I'm familiar with Title 17, which is a criminal procedure, and Title 9, which is a civil action, but I don't see anything in the Georgia codes about any statutory courts. So could you please provide me with the rules and procedures for a statutory court? The problem that he has at this point is there is no such thing as a statutory court. And so you, at this point, just have to stand your ground. You don't want to argue with the court. If he tries to say that he has jurisdiction and he's going to rule in the matter anyway, then you don't want to argue with him. You just say, well, for the record, Your Honor, you said this was a criminal action, which means it's a criminal court, which means it has to be either a common law court or a maritime court, or admiralty. And so you haven't established jurisdiction, and any ruling that you make is outside of your jurisdiction until we establish what court we're in. If he gets completely crazy about the whole thing, and you don't want to go to jail, and you don't want to get any kind of warrant pulled out against you, then I would probably suggest that you just plead not guilty and request a jury trial. Don't ever request a bench trial, because a bench trial, you're going in with that same guy to argue whether or not he thinks you've got a good case or not. So I wouldn't ever do a bench trial. Just request a jury trial. It is your right to have a trial by jury. And again, if you go back to your to the document, to your code, your Bill of Rights, you've got your Sixth Amendment right, and it says shall enjoy by an impartial jury. So I should be able to go, if this is a criminal case, I should be able to demand a jury, a speedy trial, and nature and cause of the actions being taken against me. And that's all we're doing. We're not arguing about the ticket. The speeding ticket, because it's irrelevant at this point. Before you can enforce that ticket, you first have to prove jurisdiction. So in closing, and I haven't gone through all of the aspects of this, but for the most part, I feel pretty good about this because you definitely, they did say that it's a criminal action. You do have a Sixth Amendment right to be protected against criminal actions, and there is a nature and cause, and the nature is what type of court we're actually in, so that we can determine that you have jurisdiction before we're going to actually start hearing the cause, which is, you know, the fact that I was speeding. If this is proven, then you plead guilty or not guilty and proceed accordingly. But until they can prove that they actually have jurisdiction, that's the argument that you want to make. And my other, you know, argument is, or my other statement is just to make sure. There's a lot of people out there that sound super intelligent, and they throw words and codes and all this stuff out, you know, to make it appear that they know what they're talking about. There's all kinds of documents. You know, if you go into my book section, there's a common law abatement. There's one thing that kind of gets into pretty good stuff as far as what I'm talking about is the UCC connection, and that's actually a Howard Freeman book. And in fact, I think what it is a transcript from a talk that he gave about the UCC connection. But even the heading of this is misleading because the UCC doesn't have anything to do with driving or traffic tickets. So I don't really know why it's got a title like that on it. And I don't think Howard Freeman necessarily gave it that title because it's another group that wrote this transcript up and produced it. So, but the point is, you do have rights, you do have constitutional rights that you can stand behind, and the court does absolutely have to prove jurisdiction. It's not your right, your responsibility to prove jurisdiction for the court. It is their responsibility to prove that they have it. And so that's all we're doing, is asking them nicely to prove that they actually have jurisdiction. And be careful what you read, because it's not always what they say it is.